Okay, so we've done our notes on constant of proportionality, which is just the fancy way of saying unit rate. And on our foldable, we talked about how to represent the constant of proportionality in tables, equations, and graph. So what we're going to do next is you're going to start the practice of being able to write equations from tables and then also from word problems. And then later you'll get into involving graphs. So, first thing I want to remind you are the two equations that you need to know. It is so important that you know these equations and know why you're using them. So, the first one is this is m equals y over x. And so, remember when we talked about this in our notes, that m stands for your constant of proportionality or your unit rate. So, when you're trying to calculate this, you're going to take your y and you divide it by x. So m equals y over x is used to calculate the constant of proportionality. Once you know what your m is, like what the number is, then you can plug it into this equation, right? And this is the equation that's used to represent the constant of proportionality in a table, graph, or word problem. And we're going to do about 4 problems together just so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Okay, so here's our first table. So when we're looking at this, remember what I had said when we were doing our notes is that most of the time they put X first and then Y. Okay, so it is really important for you to read the word problem to make sure that you know what is going to be in the X. And again, that's X is where the denominator is 1. Okay. And so when we look at this table, so we're going to use the equation of m is equal to y over x. Okay. And we can use, if we use our first one, it will be obvious, right? It's 3 over 1, which is equal to 3. Okay. If I take the next ratio and I do 6 divided by 2, that is equal to 3. 18 divided by 6, that is equal to 3. 36 divided by 12, and you get the point that you see every single one of these simplifies to 3. So 3 is our m, okay? So once we calculate the m, we're going to use the equation to represent it. So it would be y is equal to 3 times x. So remember, you don't fill in anything for y, you don't fill anything for x because they are constantly changing. If you look back up here at the table, your y is always changing and your x is changing. The only thing that stays constant, right? Because constant of proportionality, the only thing that stays the same is that when you simplify those ratios, it simplifies to 3. So that's the only variable that gets replaced is the m. The y and the x just stay as that variable. Okay, here's another one. So again, number of tickets and the cost. So when you're trying to figure things out, they would want to know, you have to read the word problem. So again, this is my Y, and then over here is my X. Okay. So if they tell you that the table is proportional, you don't have to really divide all of them out. But again, you're going to start with M is equal to Y over X. You're going to find the Y, and I'm going to do 3, and I'm going to divide it by 2, and that is equal to 1.5. Okay, and then again, if I tried another one, 6 divided by 4, that's equal to 1.5. So what that means is that the cost per ticket, let me write that over here, is $1.50. If I wanted it to write it just like a unit rate per ticket. This is the unit rate. It's $1.50 per ticket. But we're not writing it this way anymore. We're going to have you put it in the equation. So again, here's your first equation that you use to calculate it, and then the second one you use to represent, which is y is equal to mx, which is equal to y is equal to 1.5x. This is the equation that is used to represent that table. Okay? So let's look at some word problems. Okay, Brad can type 1,260 words in half an hour. We want to write an equation that represents Brad's average typing rate in words per minute. Okay, here's that key phrase that I talked about before in unit rates. So that tells me they want it as words per minute. Okay, so currently he is typing, 1,260 words in a half hour, but I need it in minutes. So that's going to be 30. And so when we take this, we're going to divide this out. Sorry about that. My dog was Frodo was doing something. So when we take our ratio, our current rate, and we divide it out, we're going to get 42 words per minute. Now in this case, we weren't given a y or an x, but we still know that y goes in the top and x is in the denominator, right? We know when x is 1, that's when you have the unit rate. So here's our unit rate, our constant of proportionality, but I want an equation. So when you do the equation, you're going to do it as y is equal to 42 times x, and that would be your answer there. Okay, I'm going to change colors for a little bit. Last one. The cost of one movie ticket for an adult is 1.6 times. This is really important. There's your key right there. Times the cost of a ticket for a child. If A equals the cost of one adult ticket and C equals the cost of one child ticket, write an equation that represents the relationship between A and C. So this one can be a bit confusing because they're not giving you y and x. They're using two different variables. So the first thing you want to do is you want to figure out y is equal to mx. So we need to figure out, is y going to be the a or is it going to be the c? And this up here is the key. If it's 1.6 times the cost of a ticket for a child, then your 1.6 is going to be your constant, and it's times the cost of a ticket for a child. This would be your C, and this would be your A. Because the adult is 1.6 times the cost of a ticket for the child. So when you're doing this equation, instead of using y and x, you're just going to be using A and C. And it still means the same thing. You would still, to figure it out, you would do A divided by C, and that would give you the 1.6. So what you're going to be doing is going through some practice problems with equations and with tables. You can refer back to this video or just let me know if you have any questions.